Sometimes the people who call you worthless are only afraid of what you might become if you ever discover your true worth. The silver bells of Moonridge Pack echoed across the valley as wolves gathered beneath strings of lanterns that swayed gently in the cool autumn breeze. It should have been a night of celebration. Music drifted through the air. Laughter rolled across the village square. Families stood together in their finest clothes beneath the glow of the harvest moon. But Evelyn Hart stood alone. She kept her eyes lowered as whispers followed her through the crowd like shadows. Worthless Omega. Unchosen. Unwanted. The words were never spoken loudly enough to challenge, but always loud enough for her to hear. At 22 years old, Evelyn had learned that humiliation rarely arrived with a shout. More often, it came disguised as a smile, a glance, or a conversation that suddenly stopped when she walked by. Her simple blue dress, carefully mended by her own hands, seemed plain compared to the elegant gowns worn by the other young women. Golden lantern light reflected off embroidered fabrics and jeweled necklaces, while Evelyn felt invisible among them. "There she is," someone whispered nearby. "I heard she still hasn't found a mate." Soft laughter followed. Evelyn pretended not to hear. She had become skilled at pretending. Pretending insults did not sting. Pretending loneliness did not ache. Pretending she didn't notice the pity in people's eyes. The ceremony platform stood at the center of the square, decorated with white roses and silver ribbons. One by one, respected members of the pack stepped forward to receive recognition for their achievements throughout the year. Hunters were praised. Healers were honored. Future leaders were celebrated. Evelyn knew her name would never be called. She folded her hands tightly in front of her and focused on the distant mountains beyond the village. The peaks glowed beneath the moonlight, peaceful and untouched by judgment. "Evelyn." The voice startled her. She turned to find Mara, one of the elder women of the pack. Kind eyes softened the wrinkles around her face. "You shouldn't stand here alone." Evelyn managed a small smile. "I'm used to it." Mara's expression saddened. No one should ever get used to being alone. Before Evelyn could answer, a burst of laughter erupted nearby. A group of young wolves had gathered near the platform. One of them held a wooden plaque that had fallen from a display table. "Look," he called jokingly. "Maybe we should give this to Evelyn. Most likely to disappear before anyone notices." More laughter followed. The words struck harder than she wanted to admit. Heat rushed into her cheeks. Around them, several people looked away. No one defended her. No one told them to stop. Evelyn felt something inside her quietly crack. Not anger. Not bitterness. Just exhaustion. She suddenly realized she could not spend another minute pretending this didn't hurt. Without a word, she turned away from the celebration. Lantern light faded behind her as she walked toward the edge of the village. The music became distant. The laughter disappeared. Cool night air brushed against her face. Ahead, beyond the last row of cottages, stretched the dark outline of the forbidden forest. Most wolves avoided it after sunset. Stories claimed strange things wandered beneath its ancient trees. Evelyn had never cared much for stories. Right now, the forest felt kinder than people. She stepped onto the narrow trail leading into the darkness. Behind her, Moonridge Pack continued celebrating without noticing she was gone. Ahead, beneath the shadow of towering pines, destiny had already begun waiting for her. The forest swallowed the last traces of lantern light within minutes. Evelyn followed the narrow trail between towering pine trees, her boots crunching softly over fallen needles and dry leaves. Above her, branches twisted together like dark fingers, hiding most of the moonlight. The deeper she walked, the quieter the world became. No laughter, no whispers, no judgment, only the distant rustle of leaves and the steady rhythm of her own breathing. For the first time that night, the tightness in her chest began to ease. She did not know how far she had traveled. A mile, maybe two. The cool air carried the scent of pine, damp earth, and something older that seemed to belong only to the forest. Her grandmother used to say the forbidden forest remembered every secret ever buried beneath its trees. Most wolves feared it. Evelyn had always felt strangely comforted by it. Here, no one expected her to be stronger, louder, or more important than she was. A sudden sound stopped her in her tracks. A low, strained noise drifted through the darkness. At first she thought it was the wind moving through the branches. Then it came again, softer this time, almost like a breath. Evelyn frowned and listened carefully. The sound came from somewhere beyond the trail. Common sense told her to keep walking. The stories about the forest existed for a reason. Yet something about that sound tugged at her heart. It did not feel dangerous. It felt lonely. She stepped off the path and moved cautiously between the trees. The ground sloped downward toward a small clearing where moonlight spilled through an opening in the canopy above. Silver light painted the forest floor in pale colors. Evelyn froze the moment she saw him. A massive black wolf lay near the roots of an ancient oak tree. Even resting on the ground, he looked larger than any wolf she had ever seen. His dark fur shimmered beneath the moonlight like polished obsidian. One glance should have sent her running. Every instinct she possessed told her this creature was powerful beyond anything she had encountered before. Yet it was not his size that held her attention. It was his eyes. They were open, watching her, filled not with threat, but exhaustion. Evelyn's pulse quickened. The wolf remained perfectly still. He did not growl. He did not move. He simply watched her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Then she noticed the dark stain spreading across his fur. Her stomach dropped. He was hurt. The realization erased her fear. Slowly, she took another step forward. The wolf's ears shifted slightly. His gaze never left her face. "It is okay," she whispered. "I am not going to hurt you." The words sounded foolish the moment they left her mouth. This creature could probably outrun any hunter in Moonridge Pack. Yet somehow she felt compelled to speak gently. Another breeze stirred through the clearing. The scent of pine shifted, carrying something metallic beneath it. Evelyn immediately recognized the smell. Blood. Her concern deepened. The wolf lowered his head slightly, as though even that small movement required effort. A quiet ache spread through Evelyn's chest. She knew that feeling. The exhaustion of carrying pain alone. The loneliness of suffering where nobody cared enough to notice. She had lived with it for years. "You are not alone tonight," she whispered. For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then the wolf blinked slowly. And somehow, without a single word spoken between them, Evelyn felt as though he understood. The wolf continued watching her in silence as moonlight filtered through the branches overhead. Evelyn slowly lowered herself onto one knee a few feet away, careful not to make any sudden movements. Her heart still raced, but fear no longer controlled it. Concern did. The dark stain she had noticed earlier seemed larger now. Up close, she could see that part of his thick black fur was matted and damp. The sight made her chest tighten. "Let me see," she whispered softly. The wolf remained still. His silver eyes followed every movement she made. Evelyn extended one trembling hand. For a moment, she wondered if she had completely lost her mind. Every lesson she had ever learned warned against approaching an injured predator. Yet something deep inside her insisted this was different. The air between them felt strangely calm, as if the forest itself had decided neither of them was a threat to the other. When her fingers finally brushed the wolf's fur, she expected him to pull away. He did not. The warmth beneath his coat surprised her. So did the faint tremor that ran through his body. He was trying to stay strong, trying to hide how much pain he was in. Evelyn knew something about that too. Carefully, she examined the area where the fur was darkened. Hidden beneath the thick coat was a deep scrape along his side. The wound looked fresh. Leaves and dirt clung to the edges. No wonder he could barely move. "Oh," she breathed. "You have been carrying this alone." The wolf blinked slowly. His breathing remained steady, but exhaustion lingered in his eyes. Evelyn looked around the clearing. Nearby, wild yarrow and silverleaf grew between patches of moss. Her mother had taught her about healing plants years ago before she passed away. Most people in Moonridge Pack had forgotten those lessons. Evelyn never had. She gathered what she needed and returned to the wolf's side. Crushing the leaves gently between her palms, she created a simple poultice and pressed it carefully against the injury. The wolf flinched slightly, but did not move away. "I know," she whispered. "It stings." A strange warmth spread through her hands. At first she thought it was her imagination. Then the sensation grew stronger. Soft. Familiar. Like sunlight on a cold morning. Evelyn frowned. This had happened before. Small moments throughout her life. A scraped knee healing faster than expected. An injured bird recovering after she held it. Tiny things she had never dared mention because nobody would believe her. The warmth flowed from her palms into the poultice. Golden light shimmered faintly beneath her skin. Evelyn's breath caught. She stared down in disbelief. The glow lasted only a few seconds before fading. Silence settled across the clearing once again. Then something remarkable happened. The wolf lifted his head. His breathing seemed easier now. Some of the tension had vanished from his body. The exhaustion remained, but the pain in his eyes had softened. Evelyn sat back, stunned. "Was that me?" she whispered. The wolf's gaze locked onto hers. For a brief moment, she felt something impossible. Not words, not thoughts, just a feeling. Gratitude. Deep and unmistakable. The connection vanished almost immediately, yet the echo remained inside her chest. Neither of them looked away. The forest grew quiet around them. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called through the darkness. Above, the moon shone brighter than before. And for the first time in her life, Evelyn felt as though fate had quietly stepped into the clearing and taken a seat beside them. The feeling lingered long after the strange warmth faded from her hands. Evelyn remained beside the wolf beneath the ancient oak, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. The night seemed gentler now. The cold no longer bit through her dress quite as sharply, and the silence felt comforting rather than lonely. She rested against a moss-covered root and looked up through the canopy where fragments of moonlight shimmered between the branches. For the first time in years, she felt needed. The thought startled her. Most of her life had been spent trying not to be a burden. Yet here, in the middle of the forbidden forest, a wounded creature had accepted her presence without judgment. The wolf shifted slightly and lifted his head. His silver eyes reflected the moon like polished metal. Evelyn smiled faintly. "You look stronger already." The wolf continued watching her. Then his ears suddenly twitched. His entire body became alert. The change was immediate. Every muscle tightened beneath his dark coat. Evelyn noticed it at once. "What is it?" she whispered. The wolf rose unsteadily to his feet. A low sound escaped his throat, not threatening but cautious. Evelyn listened carefully. At first she heard nothing. Then the wind changed. Voices drifted through the trees. Distant. Human. Several of them. Her stomach dropped. Someone is coming. Lantern light flickered far beyond the clearing. Small golden glows moved between the trunks like wandering stars. Evelyn quickly stood. The wolf stepped in front of her before she could move closer. The protective gesture surprised her. "They are probably looking for me," she said softly, though she was not entirely convinced. The harvest ceremony would still be underway. Nobody had noticed when she left. The lights continued drawing nearer. More voices followed. This time she recognized one. Gavin Mercer, one of the young wolves who had mocked her in the village square. "Search over there." His voice echoed through the darkness. "We saw tracks leading this direction." Evelyn frowned. Why would they be searching this deep into the forest? Another voice answered. "The council wants confirmation. If the rumors are true, we report it immediately." Rumors. Confirmation. The words made no sense. Beside her, the black wolf remained perfectly still. His eyes never left the approaching lights. Hey! Strange feelings settled over Evelyn. The men were not looking for her. They were looking for him. The realization sent a chill down her spine. Without thinking, she stepped closer to the wolf. "You should hide," she whispered. The wolf glanced toward her. For a brief moment, she could have sworn she saw disagreement in his expression. Then the nearest lantern appeared between two trees less than 50 yards away. Shadows moved behind it. Several figures. Evelyn's pulse quickened. If they found him now, exhausted and recovering, something terrible might happen. She did not know why she felt so certain. She only knew she could not abandon him. Taking a slow breath, she moved toward the edge of the clearing and stood where the approaching lantern light would find her first. The wolf remained hidden partly behind the massive oak. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Fear whispered that this was foolish. Yet another voice inside her, stronger and steadier, told her she was doing the right thing. And for the second time that night, Evelyn chose courage over fear. The lantern lights drifted closer through the trees, casting long shadows across the clearing. Evelyn forced herself to remain calm even as her heart hammered in her chest. She could now make out 4 figures moving between the pines. Gavin Mercer led the group, holding a lantern high while scanning the forest floor. The others followed closely behind him, their expressions tense and alert. "I told you I saw movement this way," Gavin said. "If it is really here, the council will want answers before sunrise." Evelyn stepped fully into the moonlight before they could move any farther. "What are you doing out here?" she called. The men stopped abruptly. Surprise flashed across Gavin's face. Evelyn. He lowered the lantern slightly. What are you doing in the forbidden forest alone? I could ask you the same question. Gavin frowned. You should not be here. Evelyn folded her arms. Neither should you. For a moment, nobody spoke. The tension hanging in the air felt strange and heavy. Behind her, hidden by the massive oak tree, the black wolf remained silent. She could feel his presence even without looking. Back. One of the men stepped forward. We are searching for something. Evelyn shook her head. At this hour? Gavin glanced toward the deeper forest. There have been reports. Reports of what? She asked. None of them answered immediately. Instead, they exchanged uneasy looks. Finally, Gavin sighed. A large black wolf has been spotted near the border territories. Evelyn's pulse skipped. She fought to keep her expression neutral. That does not seem unusual. This one is. Gavin lowered his voice. People say it is not an ordinary wolf. The forest seemed to grow quieter. Evelyn carefully held his gaze. And if you find it? Gavin hesitated. We report it. That is all. She was not convinced. Something about the nervous way they avoided eye contact told her there was more they were not saying. A sudden breeze swept through the clearing. Pine branches rustled overhead. Somewhere behind her, a twig snapped softly. The sound was almost imperceptible, but Gavin heard it. His eyes narrowed immediately. What was that? Evelyn stepped sideways before he could move forward. Probably a deer. Gavin looked past her toward the oak tree. Maybe. The lantern light flickered as another gust of wind swept through the clearing. Then something unexpected happened. A deep howl echoed from far beyond the northern ridge. Every head turned instantly toward the distant sound. Another howl answered from even farther away. Then another. The calls rolled across the mountains like waves. Gavin cursed under his breath. That is coming from the border. One of the others nodded urgently. If the patrols are signaling, we need to get back. Their attention shifted completely away from the clearing. Relief washed through Evelyn so suddenly that her knees nearly weakened. Gavin looked at her one final time. Go home, Evelyn. It is not safe out here. Without waiting for a response, the men turned and hurried back through the forest. Their lantern lights gradually disappeared among the trees until darkness reclaimed the trail. Silence returned. Evelyn released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Then she turned toward the oak tree. The black wolf had stepped forward from the shadows. Moonlight shimmered across his dark fur as his silver eyes settled on her once more. This time there was no mistaking what she saw in them. Trust. The forest remained still after the search party disappeared. Evelyn stood beneath the moonlight, her gaze locked with the wolf's silver eyes. Neither of them moved for several seconds. The connection between them felt stronger now, shaped by trust and protected by silence. Slowly, the wolf stepped closer. He no longer seemed like a creature hiding from danger. There was something regal in the way he carried himself, even while recovering. Something powerful. Something ancient. Evelyn swallowed. Who are you? She whispered. The question drifted into the cool night air. The wolf tilted his head slightly, as though considering an answer he could not give. Then he looked toward the eastern horizon. Through the trees, the darkness had begun to soften. Dawn was still hours away, but the first hints of approaching morning lingered beyond the mountains. The wolf turned back toward her. His expression seemed almost urgent. Evelyn frowned. Are you leaving? A strange sadness touched her chest. The idea surprised her. They had only known each other for a few hours, yet she could not imagine simply walking away. The wolf took another step forward until only a few feet separated them. Moonlight shimmered across his black fur. Then something impossible happened. A warm sensation brushed against Evelyn's mind. Not words exactly, more like an impression, a feeling carried on invisible currents. Find me. Evelyn's breath caught. Her eyes widened. The sensation vanished almost immediately. She stared at the wolf. Did you? She stopped speaking. The wolf continued watching her calmly. Had she imagined it? Perhaps exhaustion was finally catching up with her. Yet deep inside, she knew the message had been real. Find me. The same feeling echoed faintly through her chest. Before she could speak again, distant horns sounded from somewhere beyond the forest. The call rolled across the hills, low and commanding. The wolf immediately became alert. His ears lifted. His gaze shifted toward the sound. Whatever those horns meant, they mattered. Evelyn could feel the change in him. Duty. Responsibility. Something larger than either of them. The wolf looked back at her one final time. Then he moved closer and gently lowered his head. His forehead brushed against her hand. The simple gesture carried more meaning than words ever could. Evelyn felt warmth spread through her chest. "Be careful," she whispered. The wolf lingered for a moment longer before stepping away. He moved toward the deeper forest with surprising grace. His strength had returned far faster than it should have. Within seconds, he reached the edge of the clearing. Then he paused. Turning back once more, he held her gaze beneath the fading moonlight. "Find me." The feeling touched her mind again, stronger this time. Then he disappeared between the trees. Silence returned. Evelyn remained alone beneath the ancient oak, staring at the place where he had vanished. She did not know his name. She did not know why strangers were searching for him. She did not know why her mysterious gift had awakened in his presence. Yet somehow she knew their paths had not crossed by accident. Above the forest, the first pale colors of dawn began spreading across the horizon. And somewhere beyond the mountains, a king was already on his way home. The walk back to Moonridge Pack felt strangely unreal. Evelyn left the forest as dawn painted the horizon with streaks of gold and pale pink. Yet her thoughts remained beneath the ancient oak tree. Every step carried the memory of silver eyes watching her in the moonlight. "Find me." The words had never truly been spoken, but she could still feel them. By the time the village came into view, the harvest celebration had long ended. Most homes were quiet. Thin streams of smoke rose from chimneys as families prepared for the new day. Evelyn hoped to slip unnoticed back to her small cottage. Fate had other plans. The moment she entered the main square, she realized something was wrong. Wolves filled the streets. Merchants hurried to close their stalls. Pack elders stood in clusters speaking in urgent whispers. Even the guard stationed near the council hall looked unusually tense. "Evelyn," Mara called from across the square. The older woman hurried toward her. "Where have you been?" Evelyn blinked. "Why? What happened?" Mara lowered her voice. "The royal convoy arrived before sunrise." Evelyn froze. "The royal convoy?" Mara nodded. "The Alpha King is here." The word struck her like a sudden gust of wind. For a moment, she simply stared. The Alpha King, the ruler of the Northern Territories. A man so powerful that entire packs adjusted their lives around his decisions. He never visited small settlements like Moonridge without reason. Why would he come here? Evelyn asked. Nobody knows. Mara glanced toward the council hall. The elders were summoned immediately. Something important is happening. Before Evelyn could ask another question, a series of horns echoed across the village. Every conversation stopped. Wolves turned toward the main road leading into town. Instinctively, Evelyn followed their gaze. A procession of black carriages rolled through the gates surrounded by mounted royal guards dressed in dark silver armor. Their banners fluttered in the morning breeze. The crowd stepped back respectfully as the convoy passed. Silence spread across the square. Even the children stopped talking. The final carriage came to a halt before the council hall. A guard stepped forward and opened the door. Evelyn found herself holding her breath. A tall man emerged from the carriage. The entire village seemed to freeze. He wore a long black coat embroidered with silver thread. His dark hair brushed his shoulders. Confidence radiated from every movement. Yet none of those things captured Evelyn's attention. It was his eyes. Silver, bright as moonlight. Her pulse stopped. The world around her faded into silence. She knew those eyes. Impossible. Her heart began pounding so hard she could barely breathe. The man turned slightly, surveying the gathered crowd. For a brief second, his gaze moved across dozens of faces before settling directly on hers. Time seemed to stop. Recognition flashed through his expression. Not surprise. Recognition. The same look she had seen beneath the moonlit forest canopy. The same look that had followed her all night. The Alpha King held her gaze from across the square. And in that instant, Evelyn understood exactly who she had spent the night saving. The square seemed to disappear around Evelyn. The conversations, the movement, the dozens of curious faces watching the royal arrival all faded into the background. There was only him. The man standing before the council hall with silver eyes that reflected the morning light exactly as they had reflected the moonlight beneath the ancient oak. Alpha King Lucian Blackthorn, the ruler whose name was spoken with equal parts respect and awe across every territory in the north, and the wolf she had saved only hours earlier. A murmur spread through the crowd as the king began walking forward. Royal guards immediately followed, but Lucian lifted one hand slightly. The gesture was subtle, yet every guard stopped at once. Silence settled across the square. Evelyn felt her pulse racing. Surely she was imagining this. Surely the king had not truly recognized her from across an entire village square. Yet he continued moving forward. One step, then another. His gaze never left hers. Nearby, Gavin Mercer straightened nervously. Several elders quickly lowered their heads in respect. Mara looked between Evelyn and the approaching king with growing confusion. Nobody understood what was happening. Neither did Evelyn. Lucian stopped several feet in front of her. Up close, his presence felt even more powerful. Not frightening. Powerful. Like standing near the ocean during a storm and realizing nature possessed strengths beyond anything a person could control. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then the king smiled. It was small, genuine, and completely unexpected. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Stories about Lucian Blackthorn rarely included smiles. "You found your way home safely," he said. The deep warmth of his voice sent a shiver through Evelyn. She knew that voice. Somehow she knew it, even though she had never heard him speak before. "It was you," she whispered. Lucian's smile widened slightly. "Yes." Around them, confusion exploded into whispers. The elders exchanged alarmed glances. Gavin looked as though he had forgotten how to breathe. Evelyn stared at the king. 100 questions crowded her thoughts. Why had he been alone in the forest? Why had he hidden his identity? Why had strangers been searching for him? Yet only one question escaped her lips. "Why did you not tell me?" Something softened in Lucian's expression. "Because I wanted one honest moment." His answer caught her off guard. The king glanced toward the crowd gathering around them. Most people see a crown before they see a person. His silver eyes returned to hers. "You saw neither. You simply chose to help." Silence followed his words. Evelyn felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had not saved him because he was important. She had helped because he was hurting. The realization seemed to matter far more to him than she understood. Then, before anyone could speak again, Lucian turned toward the crowd. His voice carried effortlessly across the square. "Every person standing here should know something." The whispers immediately stopped. Hundreds of eyes focused on the king. Lucian extended one hand toward Evelyn. Pride shone openly in his expression. Last night, when others searched for power, this young woman chose kindness. When others searched for answers, she chose compassion. And when she found a stranger in need, she offered help without asking for anything in return. A stunned silence fell over Moonridge Pack. For the first time in her life, Evelyn was no longer invisible. The silence that followed felt almost sacred. No one in Moonridge Pack seemed capable of speaking. The same villagers who had overlooked Evelyn for years now stared at her as though seeing her for the first time. She felt their confusion, their disbelief, their regret. Yet none of it mattered as much as the man standing beside her. Lucian's silver eyes never left hers. There was no trace of distance between king and commoner in his expression, only certainty. One of the council elders finally stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "if this young woman has performed such a service for the crown, Moonridge Pack is honored." Evelyn almost laughed at the sudden change in tone. Less than 24 hours earlier, she had been invisible. Now the same people who rarely acknowledged her presence were treating her like someone important. Lucian seemed to notice her reaction. A faint smile touched his lips. "Honor has nothing to do with titles," he said. His voice carried clearly across the square. "True honor is revealed through character." The words settled over the crowd. Several villagers lowered their eyes. Gavin Mercer looked particularly uncomfortable. Mara stood nearby with tears shining in her eyes. Evelyn swallowed hard. She had spent years wishing someone would see her value. Now that moment had finally arrived, yet it felt different than she had imagined. There was no triumph, no desire for revenge, only peace. Lucian turned toward her fully. "There is something else everyone should know." The crowd immediately fell silent again. The king extended his hand. "Last night, this woman saved more than a stranger." Confused murmurs spread through the square. Lucian waited until the noise faded. Then he spoke the truth. "She saved her king." Gasps erupted from every direction. Several people looked genuinely shocked. Others seemed unable to process what they had heard. Evelyn felt her heart skip. Even now, Hearing the words spoken aloud seemed unreal. Lucian stepped closer. The morning sun climbed higher above the rooftops, filling the square with golden light. When I was alone, injured, and far from my guards, she asked for nothing. His gaze softened. She offered kindness without knowing who I was. Evelyn felt warmth spread through her chest. The same warmth she had felt beneath the ancient oak. The same warmth that had awakened when she chose compassion over fear. Lucian gently took her hand. A collective breath swept through the crowd. The contact felt familiar. Right. As though some invisible thread had finally connected two paths that had always been moving toward each other. For a brief moment, the world seemed to grow brighter. Sunlight danced across the square. The cool morning breeze carried the scent of pine from the distant forest. Evelyn looked into Lucian's silver eyes and saw the same trust she had seen beneath the moonlight. Neither of them needed words to understand what had changed. The villagers would remember this day for years. They would remember the arrival of a king. They would remember the revelation that stunned an entire pack. But most of all, they would remember the lesson hidden within it. The woman they dismissed as ordinary had possessed extraordinary kindness all along. As the morning sun bathed Moonridge Pack in gold, Evelyn finally understood something she had spent years searching for. Her worth had never depended on being chosen by others. It had always been there. And sometimes destiny finds those who stop searching for greatness and simply choose to be good.